Good. It's led to what we're seeing is people don't want to spend money on building. They don't want to access tradespeople. They don't know how to access good tradespeople. And if there's a property that needs work, it's going to be on the market for longer and it's going to ultimately sell at a discounted price. Because when people are lending to buy the asset, they don't want to lend more to renovate the asset. Agent desperation, I'm going to go into that a little bit later, but it's a big factor. Rental demand. So I'll leave the stats and figures to Soph, but the market is in desperate need of rental properties. And when the rental market often goes up, the sales market goes down. Well, it's kind of the other way around, actually. Interest rates, the doom and gloom is real, but people still have access to money and they are still borrowing money. What we're seeing with interest rates in the property market is people are a lot more hesitant to spend their money. So they're taking their time, whereas during COVID, we saw this massive fear of missing out. What we're seeing now is the fear of paying too much. So people are very tentative on that. Migration numbers are going to play a big part in Victoria's future because in order to boost numbers, boost the building industry, we're going to have to see more people moving and settling. And move-in ready homes. Anything that's got a move-in ready, we don't have to do any work, it looks beautiful, people can see it, they don't have to do anything. Those are the ones that are selling really quickly and the numbers are up. Next. Thank you. No, next. Oh, cool. So what's flying for those investors or those that are looking to buy? Move-in ready, as I said, no work to be done. And I classify renovations into two categories. I say to people when they're buying, okay, so you're cool to do a bit of work. Do you want to do makeup or do you want to do plastic surgery? And plastic surgery means anything structural. You know, it needs stumping, it needs a gutted kitchen, not just a facelift kitchen. It's really getting into the bones of the house. Makeup, we can do it. It's cosmetic. It's making it pretty. It's carpet. It's floating floors. It's beautiful kitchens and bathrooms and things that don't need too much. Rental ready, anything that's rent ready that has a decent return. Over the last, I'm going to say 12 months, anything that was tenanted that looked shit didn't sell. Anything that was tenanted that looked great sold quickly or is selling quickly. Same case at the moment. Just need to make sure that if you are in the market to sell a rented property, what investors are looking for is their rent return. They want it there already. They want to make sure that when they're buying it, they're taking over an asset that is paying its way or close to, depending on what their investment strategy is. And rural properties. So COVID, the mass exodus from Melbourne came into Geelong 2021, beginning of 2021, end of 2020. And it hasn't stopped in rural and regional areas. So people are still wanting a piece of land that is big enough that they don't see their neighbours. Anything that's ready to go already, it's great. Next, please, because I don't think my clicker works. Oh, this did not translate nicely, sorry. Okay, so what's different? So this is, you know, if we look at our market from 12 months ago to our market right now, what has changed buyer perception and what has changed in buyer behaviour? Finance. Of the 86 properties that Wes has sold via open negotiation over the past 2-3 years, 3 have been cash buyers. So it's not a huge amount of people that can buy with cash. Most people need a finance. So we angle our strategy towards private sales and always with the ability to buy subject to finance, because I have not yet in my career had a bank knock back a finance approval. I know I'm lucky. You might not say the same, but your career is longer than mine. That you're old. Just kidding, but not. So finance, Kim's laughing over there, but she's a mortgage broker, so she knows. So finance, you know, people want to buy with finance in place. Building and pest, I haven't sold anything over the last 18 months that hasn't had a building and pest inspection done on it. So it's a major, major factor. That's probably a flow on to insurance and valuations and things like that, but that's not my category. Urgency or lack thereof. It's the way it's gone down looks like pest urgency, but that's not really how it's supposed to say. So urgency. So people just aren't in a hurry. They don't have to buy. They can sit on their hands and they can wait. And we're actually finding in our client base that our vendors are the same. Our vendors aren't necessarily under the stress that people think that they are, but urgency is a big part of what we do when we're asking a bigger price or the price that we deem it to be worth. We're going to wait and we're going to tell our vendors, we've got to wait this out. We can lower your price and we can sell for less, or we can wait. We're not under any pressure. If you're not under any pressure, let's just hang on. Development applications are down 600% on this time 2 years ago. So there's not as much going through the council as what had been in before. So building industry and things that are happening there. And discounts and desperation, I lump them together because what an agent tells you your home is worth and what they put on that property is going to affect the rest of the area. And maybe my next slide might say the agent denominator. So this is something I'm going to run over really quickly, but it has an effect on our market because agents are not getting paid what they're used to getting paid. So coming out of 2020, 2021, you didn't have to know anything about selling real estate to make a really, really good income. You'd just chuck it on realestate.com, run a 4-week sales campaign, run it to auction, and it would sell. Too easy. It was really fun to be a part of. But when you have a slower market, you actually need to work and you need to call people and you need to have conversations. But the agent denominator is most people don't realize what an agent gets paid. So in a conventional real estate agency, the agent gets a 40% split of their commission. So if they make a $10,000 commission, the agent gets $4,000 as a gross number. The agency takes $6,000. So this is a little quick numbers. I won't run through it in full, but in order to make a retainer payment, so a retainer payment is a salary that you have to pay back to the agency. In order to make a $57,000 retainer payment, they need to be selling, did I make it down? It's about 22 sales per year. So the agent denominator means if they need to be selling that just to make minimum wage or to pay back their retainer, the interest of that agent is to sell it quickly. And the way they sell it quickly is by discounting their price and getting offers at any price. We don't do this in our agency. We don't believe in this. We don't have the overheads of an office and all those other things that lots of other agents have, because we believe in paying our people well so that we can deliver a good service to our clients, that we don't have to wait. I mean, hang on. We can afford to wait rather than we don't have to wait. So it's just really interesting because not a lot of people know that. And if your agent is discounting your price and, if they discount their fee straight away, if they're discounting their fee, what are they going to do to your price? Are they going to be your biggest cheerleader, or are they going to be like, nah, bring it down. It's not selling. We didn't get 20 people through today. We need to sell it. Let's bring it down. And that just brings down the suburb and that brings down the whole economy eventually. Next, please. Oh, I think my clicker did work. Go back, please. So this is just a little case study that I wanted to throw in here as at the forefront of what's going on. This is a property in Grovedale that we sold on Monday. These are the kind of insights for Grovedale. So you can see new sale listings of things over the last 60 days are down 14%. Average days on market are 61, which is down 12%. So that's pretty epic. Average vendor discount, 1.34, which is not too bad, but you can see it used to be 26.42. 50 sales. This one's super interesting. In the last 60 days, 32 sales in Grovedale have been withdrawn from the market. So they've been poorly priced, poorly presented, didn't get the price, agent might have promised a bit too much. And then rental listings are up 12% in this one suburb. Oh, I just needed to be patient. I'm not good like that. Okay, On this property, we ran it for about a 2.5 week campaign. We had 58 people through the door, which is standard for us at the moment, because that's how many you need to see competition to sell something. 8 offers, and that was just separate buyers. So I haven't gone into how many offers they went into to buy it. Our appraised price was $635. So without doing anything, if we just walked in that door and said, what's your house worth if you put it on the market tomorrow? It was worth $635. We actually decided with the vendor that we needed to fix some stuff. So we took away concerns of buyers, things that they were going to pick on when they walked through the door, and we spent $22,000 to get this property ready, which included styling, some painting. We rebuilt this little veranda thing that you can see at the front there. But we spent $22,000. Our theory being, if we spend that money and we take away people's objections, we need to be able to see on the other end that that's a 2 for 1. So you get twice the money that you spend. If you don't get twice the money you spend, then it's not worthwhile. And we ended up selling it under competition on Monday for $710,000. So ripping result for a house that was, it was cool, but it wasn't everyone's cup of tea. But, you know, that was just what presentation and the right strategy, thank you. I was like, what's the word? Strategy got us. So it's worthwhile knowing that when you're in a dense market with lots of other properties online, if you can do everything that you can to make it as attractive as possible for your buyers, you're still going to do pretty well. And that's it. That's us. I don't know how my time's gone, so thanks, guys. Any questions? I've probably got lipstick on there. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. It's great to see an agent that, you know, cares about the outcomes that her clients achieve. It's pretty rare in the industry, although we've got 2 here, actually. Next up, we got Sophie Anapliotis. And I did say that correctly, didn't I? Yes. Been practicing that all day instead of the script. Been in the industry for over a decade, prides herself on her service and treating her clients and tenants with respect. I'm lucky to know her and call her a friend. It's a pretty basic introduction, but she needs no introduction. So, Sophie, it'd be great to have you up here once you're done with the selfie. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Tim, I'm going to leave you to do the slides. Oh, is it going to work today? Perfect. Just got to wait. Perfect. Well, firstly, thank you all for coming here tonight. And the topic that I chose to talk about is the Victorian rental market for investors. And I'm not going to just talk about the rental market in general. I'm going to be getting into the nitty-gritty about the stresses, the reality of what's going on, and also the opportunities that are emerging through the rental landscape as well as things change. So for those who don't know me yet, my name is Sophie Anapliotis, and I'm the Director of Property Management at REG. And I've been managing property in Geelong and surrounds for investors since 2010. And while the team run the day-to-day, aka Jazz and I, who's the one who makes the magic happen, my focus is supporting investors to get the best return of outcome for their investment property through education, strategy, planning, and which I'll share some of that with you tonight. Over the last 3 to 5 years, the rental market in Victoria has been great for long-term investors and also a learning curve for both seasoned investors and new investors that have come into the market as well. They've navigated through a lot of changes, and also the changes to the legislation and holding costs have made a significant difference as well. So looking at what's happened to Melbourne Metro and regional Victoria, even in the last 12 months, the turnover rate has reduced, the length of tenancies have increased, and despite the drop of population in the Victoria during COVID, the population is now back on a rise. Rents have continued to go up, and Melbourne is now outperforming regional areas. But it's still on a rise, where regional was outperforming Melbourne in late 2020 to mid 2022. But another interesting factor is that the investor lending has reduced by almost 40%. And I think that there's a topic to be said there about what's happening in the market, because I would argue that a lot of people who have been in the market, especially in Geelong Regional over the last 10 years, have used their equity to continue to build their wealth. So I actually reckon that number is not because there's less lending, but because there's more money to be spent. So that's another topic for another day. So although the data looks stable, Victoria has been hit the hardest over the last 3 years in terms of government and legislation changes. And that's been the scary part for a lot of investors, especially ones that have just come into the market. So we had rent freezes. We had pause on rent increases, 130 plus legislation changes. We had new compliance. We had switchboard upgrades, interest rates increasing, and land tax increase. And the people who were cleaning up the most were the trades, sorry guys, who were in the room, banks, all that sort of thing. You're welcome, sorry. And the investors are starting to get a little bit worried about whether the cash flow and whether the yields are working for them. So it's not the finances, and it's not necessarily the finance and holding costs that are the pain point for a lot of people. It's the changes in legislation that's making it harder to handle difficult tenancy disputes and feeling let down by VCAT because they've also been really overwhelmed with a lot of disputes that have been happening. Another point that's been added to stress for landlords is 30% drop of experienced property managers in Victoria. And that's a thing that a lot of people don't talk about, is how much stress that's caused to investors feeling like they didn't get the support that they once had because of the stresses that property managers also went through. Some investors are starting to look at whether traditional long-term renting is worth the return and the stress. But I'm an optimist, and I always check my things. But look, as a property manager, it's my job to educate on what can be done to maximize return, but keep your asset protected by minimizing risk and ensuring you're covered, following local laws and legislation. But this is tough at times because I'm seeing opportunities that are there, but the restrictions that we have as investors in Victoria. And as an investor myself, I'm seeing these opportunities missed and some holes in the legislation that stop Victorian investors from earning a higher income to make it worth their while, but also stops investors from offering more affordable renting solutions. And these constant changes have made investors and myself look outside the box and think about other avenues. And my main topic of conversations with the investors of properties that I manage have been, how can we continue to improve the numbers and return of investment while making it sustainable for renters too? And it's a real juggle to have at the moment. But I've been diving into what options and opportunities are emerging for investors to explore, which is what I'll be sharing with you guys tonight. Now, when we look into housing affordability, it shows that owning a home has become more difficult in terms of affordability over the last 20 years. We're not necessarily in a housing crisis, but we're in an affordability crisis. When we look at rental affordability stats on the report, the median household income to rent remains relatively stable at 30.8%, which is quite good, but it's the lower income households that have been affected the most. And social housing has become scarce. Cost of living, cost of housing, and interest payments for investors have increased. The low-income earners are spending over 50% of their income in rent. The government and social housing is extremely scarce, which is putting pressure on private investors to keep rents low. However, this is a difficult place for investors to be in, as holding costs are rising and renting is still affordable for median household earners. So the demand just continues to rise, and the rents continue to rise as well with that. So what opportunities are emerging? All this said, the rising rents have still not kept up with the holding costs, and investors are wondering whether rental income will be enough to cover the rising costs and make it worthwhile to invest over the next coming years. What I'm going to share tonight is a high level of the rental housing options that have been emerging due to a range of factors for both renters and homeowners and investors. Consumer behaviour in renting has changed as the need of affordability, flexibility, and particular needs such as assisted living for disability and aged care within the home are required. So what renting options have been emerging to cater to these growing needs of renters, and also could be better potential rental income to continue comfortably providing housing for renters for years to come. Suspense is killing me. Can I have some assistance, please? Perfect. So the first one is the obvious one. It's been all over the headlines, and it's short-term accommodation, better known as Airbnb. And short-term accommodation, it's not just for holiday goers. STA is widely known now it's been used for travellers, people coming down for work, but only for short periods, such as nurses, or there might be construction companies that are doing a lot of work, especially around regional Victoria. And there's already a lot of work being done getting ready for Com Games coming up as well. And that's where we're seeing a lot of guests coming through as well. But it's also being used as an option and a widely popular option for NDIS participants if they need to as well, which I'll go into a little bit later. The governments, though, have seen a surge of holiday accommodation with 160,000 properties across Australia. And stats show that short-term accommodation can make the same or similar income in 130 days than what they can in a year renting long-term. Governments are encouraging or trying to penalise owners to get short-term accommodation back to long-term renting to help with the housing shortage. But I honestly don't see this is going to be a major help because, as I said before, we don't have a housing crisis, we have an affordability crisis. And if that particular property is not going to fit the need of the affordability, then it's not really going to fill the need of the social and affordability housing that is causing most of the pressure on the market right now. And as two examples, because it's private information, I didn't share it on publicly, but we've got two properties in particular, and we looked at whether long-term or short-term was going to suit them. The first one was going to be rented at $510 a week, and now it's averaging $1,425 a week. And that's been since April until August, and they're booked until August, which is $22,000 or almost $23,000 of income in 4 months instead of $8,160. So when you're looking at those numbers, you think, yes, there's a bit more risk that comes to it, but is it worth to keep the property if you are in a position where you might not in other ways? And the second one would rent for $470 a week in the long-term rental market, and it's averaged a return of $856.59 a week, which is $11,000 in 3 months instead of the $6,110 in the same time renting long-term. Second one is renting rooms, and it's a little bit cheeky, but your tenants are doing it, so why aren't you? Every day I see properties coming up on Facebook from tenants that have just moved into a property, and then they say room for rent, $200 a week, plus bills, plus this, plus that. And there is an ability for owners to do this as well. But their education there is widely known as more, setting it up as full student accommodation. But by 2024, we are expecting 600,000 immigrants to come to Australia. So the need for affordable housing is going to continue to push this into a trend of people choosing to live together because of that flexibility and affordability. In the local council, in the Geelong City Council, if you're occupying for less than 3 occupants, then it doesn't fall under rooming housing. It's when you get to 4 or more or up to 12 that then you have to get the permits required and everything like that. So look into your own local council with what their permits are. No? Has it? With 3 and under? But it's still rooming. Yeah. So it can still be advertised as rooming, but then there's particular... Cool. Thank you for that clarification. If unrelated. Yeah. Got to look at the grey and look at the rules. Thank you for that, Fawaz. So, and for a house that would rent for about $450 a week, renting out the rooms, you could potentially see a return of about $600 or $700 a week. But if you're renting a smaller house with 4 or less people, you also do take on the utilities, have to furnish it, and all those sort of things. So sometimes it's not really worth your while until you start going down the path of having more people under rooming. But I think that that's going to be a big topic of discussion for later, which I'd love to have a chat with you, Brian, about that even further. But I'm also, one of the interesting things that I've seen as well is I'm seeing a trend of local homeowners that are choosing to rent out their spare rooms in their house. And there's, even though it's not something that we assist with, there are emerging companies such as the Room Exchange that actually assist with setting up agreements for these type of situations. So I'm just seeing that as more of an emerging thing now as well. Yeah? Can you hear me guys better now? Everyone online, thank you very much. Yes, please. Perfect. And I'm actually going to get Nicole to come up and talk about this briefly because this is an area, disability accommodation is a fast growing, especially in the Geelong region. And I thought that I would get Nicole to talk about a couple of minutes for anyone who is interested in learning about how this is an option for people as well. So thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Soph. We only come up with this idea while I was here for Friend of Me, which is the charity that everyone's raising for some funds for tonight. So, but my background is in disability for the last 20 years. And for the last 6 years, I've, I guess, pivoted a little bit, seeing a lot of people with disabilities that have been put into aged care and living in unsuitable accommodation, hospitals, hostels, caravan parks, diversifying into that specialist disability accommodation space was a no-brainer for me because I'm connected in the industry. So having that network in the disability space makes a huge difference from, say, property developers or real estate agents getting into the disability space because they're just not going to break into that space very easily. So what we see, so I'm from a company called Empowered Livability. So we have 60 plus houses across Australia in this space. And we see, I guess, a lot of property spruikers that are shouting this from the rooftop as being the next big thing, that there's so many people that need housing. It's 20 years, it's guaranteed rental returns, and we just know that that's just not true. So the government actually does not guarantee this as a rental. You have to actually have tenants. And to have tenants, you have to have your pulse in the disability space. And also the engineering of these properties generally costs around an extra $100,000 for extra engineering for things like extra roof trusses to hold things like hoists for people with medically complex needs to be able to be lifted, into bed and things like that. So what we see generally, I know you've got sort of short-term accommodation and crisis accommodation. Over COVID, we saw that as a huge thing because there was lots of people stuck in hospital that, hospitals needed to free up space for people with COVID. So that was and that's always been a huge thing, across the entire sector. So supported independent living is actually the care provision. And what the NDIS is really pushing towards is for care provision to be separate to housing provision. So our company only does the housing provision because we really believe in that transparency between housing and care provision, because historically over the last 100 years, and probably a lot of people have heard in the news about the Disability Royal Commissions and abuse and neglect kind of thriving in those where there's not a lot of transparency between housing and care provision. But SDA, so Specialist Disability Accommodation, is what we specialise in, and we work with a lot of investors, so huge, big sort of super fund, big investors, and also your mum and dad investors as well. So we spend a lot of time probably turning people off getting into the space. But at the same time, we just want to make sure that people are working with teams that know what they're doing, that are really coming from that lived experience of disability, that understand the type of housing and what's actually not just ticking a box from a compliance point of view, but actually what's practical for people with disabilities to live. And also understanding that your tenants, the matching of those tenants is highly, highly important, because otherwise you're just going to have a constant turnover. And if you don't understand the demand mapping of where people need housing, and also if you don't do your due diligence, there's houses being built at the moment, and there's been a lot in the media in the last couple of weeks, investors completely being blown out of the water because they just don't have tenants. So if someone's selling you a property and they haven't done a due diligence, they haven't done a demand mapping, and you aren't given that information, And also, if they don't know how many other properties are being built in that same area, there's a lot of houses being built in those greenfield estates that are very, very cheap land. There's 10 in the same street. They're not going to be filled. And I guess that's where rooming house kind of comes into it, because a lot of, and I don't know who was talking about the rooming houses before, but knowing that there needs to be accessible bathrooms, a lot of these houses, I guess, and good people who are in this sector are looking at that hybrid model from an investment point of view, knowing that if the disability sector can't fill that property, then it's already up to code for a rooming house. So just making sure that you're working with people that understand the space and aren't just new getting into it. I think that's probably the biggest thing for us. And just making sure, even in terms of your asset maintenance stuff, and I know, James, you do a lot of this kind of stuff. Yeah, there's a lot more compliance in these type of builds. There's extra fire safety. There's a lot of maintenance because you've got people in wheelchairs and, you know, there's scrapes along the wall, there's property damage. So the costs associated are obviously a lot higher. Yes, returns are hugely higher than a general rental property, but just making sure that you're working with the right people that really understand that. And we were talking earlier about kind of doing, you know, if people are interested in that space, we absolutely can consult to investors to make sure they're getting that demand mapping, they're getting that due diligence, and they're also getting that asset maintenance of what your expected outlay is going to be each year, of what we 100% know you're going to have to outlay, but then what we see across the board. So we're probably one of the biggest private providers in Victoria. And there's some other really, really big providers, and they're doing the care provision and housing. And that's what the NDIS is really trying to get away from. So hopefully that helps.
No, thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming up and talking about that. Yeah. And that's where it becomes really important, because there's all these options that are now emerging and becoming available, but it is about making sure that your property is suitable for it and that you're doing the right due diligence and looking at, there are the opportunities there, but it's also making sure that it's going to fit into what you want as well. So there's a few different things. I'll finish up because I think I've gone over my time. So I'll just quick. Okay. So what are the things that I would like to see in Victoria? And we've touched on the driving demands and shifting rental markets and exploring different options to determine ROI. But there's a few options that I've seen around Australia that I would love to see happen here, because I think that it's really helped with rental affordability and also leveraging higher rent returns for investors. Biggest one is granny flats. It's becoming widely popular in other regions, and I'm seeing that there's been more questions that have been coming up on local pages asking about granny flats, because it's an affordable option to have that separation if you are choosing to live with family, which a lot of people are choosing to do now, but having that separation that's currently not allowed in Victoria currently. But I think that would be a really good step forward to help with affordable renting solutions, but also allowing that independence in that as well. One of the other areas that I'm seeing more and more of are dual use. So tenants who are wanting to run a business from home. And as much as we would love to see that, and it would fill the need of being able to have more of a sustainable, working from home, living from home, the one downside to that at the moment is, even if you agree with that, most of your insurance will not cover you. And it's about minimizing your risks. That's the biggest part with that. But having more information around that, or seeing that coming up as a topic of conversation in future in Victoria, I think would be a really interesting topic to have. But what I want to leave you with today is, there's been a lot of information of what you can potentially do. Can you go back, please, Tim? Thank you. There's a lot of things that you can do, but it's what are the things that you can do now that you can leave with today, that you can go and explore and potentially get a little bit of cash back in your pocket as an investor. So there's a few options there. There's the Energy Saver cashback offer that's available till August. There's cashback offers on aircons, which is really great because the demand of aircons are starting to come up now. Hot water service rebates. There's also going to be a rebate that is coming out to get more rebate and cashback on removing old gas heaters and putting air cons in, but it was released on the 31st of May, but there's currently no products that have been approved on it yet, which is really annoying because we want to use the rebate. But then there's also free weatherproofing, shower head upgrades. But then there's a few different things, which is reviewing your investment property outgoings every year. So yes, everyone does their yearly tax return and things like that, but getting an accountant's perspective on whether their investment property could perform better. Have they been doing excessive maintenance? Have they not? All those sort of things. But also reviewing your maintenance. If you have been doing a fair bit of maintenance on one particular area, have a review of that and see if that money could go into doing some capital improvements into the home instead of reactive maintenance, because then it can become a tax depreciated item. And then also doing regular rent reviews. The more I've been on the ground, the more I've seen that properties are still very, very under market value in rent. So doing those regular rent reviews will really, really help in the short term as we combat the high interest rates. So thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you all.
Thank you, Sophie. Just a quick shout out to Sophie. The wealth of knowledge that she has about property management is unmatched, and as everyone knows, it's a very high turnover industry, so it's hard to find a good one that sticks around for an extended period of time. So great to have you with us. Next up, we've got Wes Thornton from was born and bred in Geelong, and married his gorgeous life partner Tracy 37 years ago. He went on to spend more than 20 years as a master builder in residential and commercial sectors, running his own business with up to 20 staff, building houses, hotels, nursing homes and hospitals. In 2001 to 2002, Wes embarked on further property investment education by working for one of Australia's sharpest property minds, Henry Kay, for 18 months. On leaving, he also undertook finance training, not to write loans, but instead to understand how to leverage the banks at what they do, and he did exactly that. What he gained in knowledge in that time was the catalyst for him buying and flipping more than 80 properties in Victoria and Queensland in his own portfolio, and never had a bad deal. Let's all welcome Wes.
Thank you. I thought we were taking breaks and having drinks now, so I was primed for that. But we're not doing that. So a couple of points that came out of the last lot of information, which I'm touching on just slightly too, with the agent denomination. That is a really big one. So Em's covered 90% of that. There's just a couple of points I want to add to that. And the due diligence side of things, you're going to hear a lot about that tonight. It's so important to get the education, to know exactly what you're doing before you go and do it. Granny flats, I can just see why is the problem we don't have granny flats in Victoria, because we're building on 300 square metre blocks now. There's nowhere to put a granny flat, and they're big mansions on those. So I see that being a bit of a problem, obviously. A few suburbs you'll get away with it, but then no one wants to put fill a big yard now with a granny flat. And what's available now? Well, what didn't get mentioned there is you could probably over-insure your house, your dumpy old property, rent it out to the Hells Angel and let them burn it down. So then you could walk away with a new property. So just a couple more ideas to throw in there. All right. So my discussion about property and beyond, and how to master buying and selling cheap. So what I want to cover off there is we'll go, that's the main topic as a whole. So if we can go on the next, just the next slide will be fine. And you can do the video for this one if you like. That's just the video down the bottom. So this is the amazing team. I'll shut up while you... bunch, and that was really just to get everyone to talk about themselves, which is a really hard thing to do. And if you get in front of the camera and you've got to do that, then I'm sure that you'll feel as uncomfortable as that. So just touching on each of those people there, when you look at someone like Soph, you've already realised that there's a person that loves structure, process, legislation. She lives that stuff. Oh, yeah, go figure. Genuine, honest, trustworthy. She's a carer as well. So if you understand the magic of colours, then Soph is definitely a yellow and a green. If you look that up, magic of colours, you'll understand what I mean. Jazz is she's such a valued person on the rentals team. Goes above and beyond, way more than she needs to. A carer, strong family values, structured, ordered, incredible lady. Just doesn't believe it yet, but she will one day. Bronte, my daughter, she's my favourite daughter. I must mention too that I've only got one. But we're kind of like two peas in a pod. We're very similar in a lot of ways. So we can niggle each other, but at the same time, it's an amazing relationship. Devoted mum, carer as well. So she's a yellow and a blue. So the yellow aspect is the carer side of it. The blue aspect is you've got to have fun. Well, she's the yellow and the blue. Yeah. Whereas the yellow and the green, like these other guys, they're the carers, but they've also got to have the detail. They've got to have that analytical aspect of what they do. And so why I'm mentioning this is that for the guys who are investors, you need to understand this about yourself to understand the people you're talking to. Because if you're negotiating with someone on a deal somewhere, and you will be, if that's why you're here, whether you're selling something yourself or you're buying, you're going to need to understand how to read that person and what drives them. So the minute that you can understand them and the words they use, then you'll be able to understand how to develop and provide the information back to them. And that's what we do as agents. That's what we should be doing as agents. So we're not there to stand on a house and then go, just give me your keys and I'll sell your house for you. You're actually trying to get the most. And so you can only get the most out of the people that you can influence, but influence right, not influence wrong. So it is so important. Emily's the yellow and blue. I think there's some green in there too, but she's definitely a blue. She loves routine and she's motivated by schedules and routine. She told me that today. And she's lost when she doesn't have that. Wade he's the green, yellow, and he's got some blue in there because he's definitely, as everyone says, he's got the cheeky nature. Trade background, which is great when you're in this industry because you give you an insight into what people need to know about within a property. So all of those things, as I say, you need to understand. So amazing team. From my side of things, you've heard it all before, so I won't go into that. Next, we have, what's the next one? So next slide, if we can. One after that, that's just a suburb one. So the purpose of buying in the menu of opportunities. So what Em covered, just really quickly, we had that fear of missing out by people. So everything prior to April last year was nuts. It was just off the charts, buyers everywhere. And so we had the low stock, we had all those sorts of things. But we had agents who are busy, yes. And that was amazing and brought a lot of new people into the market. But what you see in these changing markets is agents will jump from shop to shop now. And if you're looking through the market, this happens every cycle. So they'll stand at an agency and they'll tell you how amazing that agency was, and it's the best agency. Go with us because we're so good. But then next week you'll find them at another agency. And the reason they've gone to another agency is because they can't cut it where they are, but they go with the same baggage and the same training. And that's the problem. The industry is not trained on the necessities of what you need to be a good agent. And to be a good agent, you've got to really understand property. And you can't understand property if you've just got out of school and you see that you want to go and drive a nice car and walk around in a suit all day. That doesn't make you talented. That doesn't give you the knowledge that you need to do. You've actually got to get an education about that. And that's the part that probably gripes me the most because, yes, I've done the hard yards, starting, given my age, and I'm old, I know, but not quite that old. I am 60. So when I started out in my building career, I was in the first group apprenticeship scheme when it started in Victoria many years ago. Can't remember the date of that, to be honest, but I was on $100 a week. So I was asked the question when I started, what makes me worth $100 a week? You know, and you think now you've got trades. Anyone got children or any of you trade guys? What's a young apprentice get, a first year apprentice get these days? Anyone? Too much. How much? 400 a week? 400 a week, yeah, but 400 a week still, when you're talking about $100 a week, I mean, like $400, you'll be going like, wow. I know an electrician, a young electrician who's on over $700 a week, and it was in his first year with the allowances and that he was getting. It was nuts. So, but anyway, he was able to get it, and so good for him. The purpose of buying. So you've got to know what you're buying as an investor. you've got to have a plan for what you're doing. So what's the type of property that you want to buy? So then you've got to kind of work it back. It's like looking at life and going, well, I want to set myself up, but what does it look like? And I'll need to go out to the end and I need to look back and make sure that I'm trying to guide myself to that. This is no different. So the house that you want to buy, you need to make sure that you're picking it up in the right location. The right location not necessarily is in your own backyard. So what I've always done is I believe is you go where the numbers work. You don't go what's close to you just because it's around the corner. And so I've bought a lot of property in Queensland and flipped those properties, buying and selling to make sure that I was getting it was for profit, basically. That was my job. So I just fly backwards and forwards, do all analysis here, buy the property, get my wife to sign a contract. She just loved seeing those contracts going her nose. She was in debt, not me, and then flip the property out. So it works when you know what you're doing and you know the numbers, but that's the analytics that you need to understand. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But the plan was, what was my goal? My goal was to flip it. So the structure of what I had to have to do that needed a new company for each property to make sure that I was maximizing what I was doing. I knew I was turning it over. But what was my plan B and my plan C if it didn't work? So I see too many people going into property right now and they don't have a plan A at least. They just go, oh, someone else bought a house around the corner. That's great. We need to go and buy one. Well, wrong. Because what are you buying? Now, are you buying a house that's on 400 square metres? That we've kind of got one that, not ourselves, but a client has, 400 square metres, and it's you've got a ramp to get into the front door, into the garage. So guess what? Straight away, that's going to take an older market out. Because if you've got a driveway that's on a ramp to get into it, most of the older market don't want that. It doesn't work for them, right? If you've got steps to get to the front door, they don't want that either. If you've got steps to get out of the garage into the house, they don't want that either. So you've got to look at the lay of the land to understand it. You don't also, by having a slope that's this way driving up into the garage, you've got car doors that can't be opened by mums who need to open the door to get babies out and to put groceries in. They don't like that. So if you haven't thought about all of these elements beforehand, they're like a jigsaw. You've got to look at it as a puzzle and you've got to tick off each part of it. And if you haven't ticked off each part of it for that area, you're buying in the wrong area. If you're going into an area and you're buying 3-bedroom houses in those areas, but everyone in those areas wants a 4-bedroom house, you've made a mistake. Yeah, but it could be the flip side. You're going and buying. So I know that we did some analysis out in the Armstrong Creek, Mount Dunedin area at one stage, and everyone was buying and building 4-bedroom homes. Well, the ones that actually went up the most, like significantly the most, were the 3-bedders. So you actually built the wrong home, and you should have looked at what the market wanted. So you've got to apply what the market's after, and you've got to make sure that you get it right. So then to get it right, how do you get it right? So, well, lost my notes. How do you get it right? Well, Emma's touched on it. You buy off, from a buying cheapest perspective, you buy off agents that are selling a lot of properties in the area. Where's the problem with that? If you've got a lot of boards up in the area by one agency, no matter what colour that is, could be dark, could be even an awkward colour in an area, what happens is they control the pricing, because every Monday morning they go back into a sales meeting, and on the whiteboard you've got a name up there and it says, oh, here's the property that you had for sale. Have you sold it? No, I haven't sold it. And if you haven't sold it, why haven't you sold it? Yeah. And back to the point that Em made before about the commission structures. If you're on $57,000 a year, that's $1,000, $1,100 a week. If you haven't paid that back, you're behind the 8 ball, as you said, it's 40 cents. Well, it's actually 32 in some agencies, 32 cents on the dollar, not 40 cents on the dollar. So within 3 weeks, the agent's broke. If they haven't paid that back, so that's $3,300. They owe 32. If they made $3,200 out of a $10,000 commission and they owe 33, they're broke, right? So if they're broke, your price is getting driven down, which Em touched on, right? And that's going to happen religiously. And if that happens multiple times, the agency gets rid of them. And then you'll find them pop up in another agency. Nothing's changed. Yeah, same. So you've just got to make sure that you're not running with an agency that looks at a board on Monday morning and says, wow, we've got these sales and that price drop, because now it's all been talked about. The property price was at $780 in one example that we know, a young couple with a young baby and another young child. The baby was only about 3-4 months old. They were told $780 on a property that was never $780. Within 1 week of that being opened by that agency and directors, they dropped it by $50,000, right? So they lost 50 grand. Next week, they got no one through the open. Guess what they did? They changed the price without even getting the authority signed off. That's illegal, for one. And they're a big agency, and that's what they did. They end up selling it a few weeks later for $620,000. They burnt that young couple recently. This is recently by $60,000 because it was every day worth $675. Now, we've had other properties in the same area, and it's a struggle to get the market to see that value now. Why? Because the reference on that property that they had, it was a bigger house, bigger garage, same size land, bigger amenity, and overall better amenity. And now you're up against the 8 ball as this other buyer trying to sell that you should get that mark, but you can't because everyone now has this access to data, and they see the data and they go, wow, that's at 620, so is yours, or yours is less. So now you've got people offering $590 for it. It's not worth $590. So we, as Em said, we've got the patience to wait for that because that buyer's not going to buy it. We're going to tell that buyer that you can put the offer in, we'll take your offer, but we're not going to accept your offer. It's up to the vendor, but we'll convince the vendor not to take it. Yeah, this is what's going on. So you've got to be really mindful of that. So poorly advertised properties are great to buy. Off-market sales are great as well. Anyone selling off-market is crazy because you don't have enough buyers. You need as many buyers on it as possible. You need subject to finance buyers. You never want to go to auction, guys. A traditional auction. You never want to go to a traditional auction. That might sound funny. Why don't you want to do that? Because at a traditional auction, you cannot accept subject to finance buyers, which means you're cutting them all out of the market. So if we've done the 80-odd properties and there's only been 3 cash buyers, we've had hundreds of buyers. That means that none of those properties that we sold would have sold because they couldn't have gone to a cash buyer. They would have gone to a subject to finance buyer. And who said that someone with money who has access to money has got more accessible finance ability than someone who can get finance? Because there's plenty of equity. The property market's gone up. There's lots of equity. So if someone can tap into that equity, it's not physical cash they've got in their pocket, but they can tap into it, but they're still subject to finance because the bank wants to see the contract. So you do not ever want to, if anyone's buying, don't ever get pushed into the fact that you can actually go and sign a contract that you've had pre-approval and the bank's going to guarantee to give you the money. Now, you might think that's the case, but I've actually have had it happen to me on a $1.8 million deal we did in Queensland, where we had the finance right up until the 11th hour and the banks pulled it. Fully approved, and they pulled it. So we then had to scramble to find this money to settle that property out. So you don't want to go that. You want to make sure that you're subject to finance. You've got a protection. You've always got the ability to get your deposit back. You don't want to lose your deposit. Okay, so that's a really important part. But you won't hear that from other agents because they just want you to sign anyway. Because the minute they've got you signed, they've got you hooked, and you can start to lose your deposit. And that's what you don't want to be. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to find properties, obviously, with structural issues, a non-structural issue, things that are easily fixed. Broken marriages and business failures are always good for this. And you want to put low ball offers in and just walk away and wait for a phone call. If you don't get the phone call, go and do it to the next one. Now, there's lots of these. I've got about 30 of these strategies that we've used on different properties. I don't have time to run through them all tonight. But we know that the price and value is subjective. So here's a perfect example. Many years ago, there was a block of land in Highton that I went to an auction on, and I was watching the strategy I learned from Henry. Now, I heard someone laugh before in regard to when Henry's name came up. Now, some people will know Henry Kay and some people won't. I knew him very well from having worked there. Because what I did was I was in construction. I left construction to go and learn what I didn't know. So I took the steps to actually understand what he did really well. Yeah, and when I learned that, then when I left there, that's when we did 60 properties in 2 years. I was able to do that knowing exactly what to do. And I got trained in finance, not to write a loan, but to make sure I could understand how to leverage the banks. Back to the grey point. You've got to understand where there's grey and you've got to use it to your advantage. And if you can use it to your advantage, you can get ahead in leaps and bounds. If you want to just look at every aspect of the legislation, you don't want to take any of those options available to you, then you've just got to get what everyone else gets. Yeah, so you've got to find the grey. And there's grey in lots of things. So, you know, in buying and flipping properties, this particular property went to an auction, stood at the front of the auction. Everyone's like that. Auctioneer's right here. I'm standing here, and I'm watching the crowd. Because he said, you want to watch where the bids are coming from. So you do. And you watch them, and they drop out. And there's no other bids. And so there's about 5 blocks that have sold, and I didn't even want to go and buy a block. Didn't even have a deposit with me. So I went to this, and this block of land came up. It's right beside the other, same size, same outlook, everything else. Back in the day, this is Highton. We bought this for 76 grand, right? So that's how long ago it was. 76 grand. So I ended up, we put down the deposit, so seven grand deposit. I went away within 30 days. I'd resold it for 125. So So how did I take a $76,000 block and sell it for 125? I told the market that's what it was worth, and I proved to them that's what it was worth, and there was no others that they could buy. I did exactly the same things in St Albans Park. Went over there was only one subdivision left that could really pick up the blocks in that subdivision. There was nothing going through council due diligence. Went to the council, found out what's happening, and there was no land coming up everywhere. Like Bisnella didn't have any. There was lots of developers around that didn't have any. So I secured all 11 blocks. $500 deposit on every block, all 11 blocks. You go, why would you do that? Well, I went and got a bank guarantee, took the money out of the bank, $6.5 grand, put our own money into another account, got a bank guarantee across that. That cost me $164 for the bank guarantee, gave the bank guarantee to the developer to say, when you're finished, we'll settle these blocks. I went out and sold every one of those blocks, and we sold them for a $300,000 profit by reselling those blocks to the people that needed them, because I'd just taken them off them. And that was all the developers and the builders that needed to build next. They didn't have access to them. So they might have wanted to pay what they were paying before, but they had to pay what I had now because they couldn't buy them anywhere else. So you've got to put yourself in a position of where you've got control. And so using strategies like that, you've got to broadly look at the market, see what's happening. You've got to micro look at the market and see what's happening in the key pockets and what opportunities are there. And you've got to have a menu of strategies that you can then go, well, this one will work there. Well, no, that one will work there because that one won't work there. And the minute you've got those in your head, when you see a deal come up, you'll know exactly what to do. And they're the key points you need to do. I helped a developer in Queensland. We sold him a block of land. When I was there a few years before, long story short, it was basically, well, I forget how big it was now, 8,094 square metres, I think it was, in Trinity Beach. We bought the whole lot. You couldn't even see it because it was just overgrown. And the fence and the sign had fallen down. So it was owned by a solicitor. He was going through a divorce. He rang me this next year and said, you know, I've shown you that block. You're interested in it? I said, yeah, okay, I'm interested in it, because I knew what it was worth then. I could have bought it for $750,000 the year before. We ended up buying it for $950,000. But $950,000 was cheap, because what I'd realised when I did my due diligence on it is that the zoning had changed on the property and it was going to go to high-rise. So straight away, it goes from low-rise to high-rise. So I knew what that could do to the property. So I ended up selling that property within 12 months. We secured it, an $80,000 deposit. That's all it took. Resold it, and we sold it for $2.8 million. So then what I did was, because I knew that I wanted to sell it to a developer, well, he needs to sell more properties. He needs to get his bank loans through. So what we did was secured 12 of his first 24 apartments. We bought 6. We bought 6 for some family and friends. We sold those to them at cost. So they got in at the discount. We then sold the others by lifting the price of each of those others to protect their position. So that by the time that they were finished, the settlement came around, which was 3 years. They were about 30% to 35% up in value on every single one of their properties. So the bank would settle them. But if they wanted to keep them, they could keep them. If they didn't, they could sell them. And I don't even know to this day as to whether all of them kept them or they didn't keep them, to be honest. I know most sold, but there could be still some that were held. So it's, again, understanding what's available to you and stepping into the market and being able to do that at any point in time. All right. Okay, analysis side of it. Analysis side of it is super key. Right. So I'm just going to, you're not going to be able to see this. I didn't put it on a slide because it's too awkward to put on a slide. But the analysis that we do on a property, so that you can understand it, and this is what if you're an investor and you're not doing this sort of analysis, you're actually, the chances are that you're going to lose money, and you don't want to do that. So get this stuck in your head to make sure that you're doing it, and you can just do this everywhere, anywhere in Australia. I've proven this to do it anywhere in Australia. So you go in and you find all the land that's available in any particular area that you're actually looking to focus on. And you've got to then drill back and you've got to find out what the square metre rates of that land is, what the size of it is, what the square metre rates are, whether it's affected by easements, whether it's not, what its orientation is. All of this is key, right? Because if you've got a house in Newtown, it's in Buckland Avenue, and you're on the north side of the street, you're going to sell that house for 150 grand more than if you picked it up and put it on the south side of the street. And a developer will buy one on the north side if they can develop it, as opposed to buying one on the south because of that north aspect to it. So it becomes way more valuable. You've got to know your area as to what the drivers are for that. If you go to Queensland, you buy on a canal and you buy on the wrong side of the canal, you could be throwing a lot of money away. So you've got to know. I wouldn't even be able to tell you which side of the canal to buy on because I don't buy up there. But I know it's that important. So you need to understand that. So not only do you do it with land, so with the land, again, you bring about all of those key points. So you've now got all your blocks, so all the various sizes. Then you drill into the house, every house that's sold. So within that, you need to know what the sale price is. You need to know the days on market, how many beds, baths, car, the type of garage on the property, land square metre rate for the property or the land squareage, and then you apply a square metre rate once you've worked out all the land. Then you do a house size and a garage size time. So if you do all of these things and you do that consistently across every property, the minute you then spreadsheet that out to then tell you exactly the numbers on that will tell you exactly what property to buy and what to sell it for every single time. And I can absolutely categorically guarantee that if you do this, you will not make mistakes when you buy. You'll know exactly what's undervalued and you'll know exactly where you can pitch a property to upsell a property every single time. Does not fail you. Yeah, just do that if you're an investor. Okay, let's go to the next slide just quickly to see if there's anything else I needed to cover. Open negotiation, really quickly. So open negotiation is a place that you want to use to sell. I went to the auction part before. Open negotiation allows you to sell by auction, allows you to sell by private treaty, but it brings the best elements together. The best elements being there's a time, there's an end date to it because no one's got any concentration span these days. So you've got to tell them when it finishes. So our average days on market are 9 on open. Once we launch the campaign, 9 days. Yeah, not 60 odd days like some. So, and the reason that is because we're actually telling the market, here's a Section 32 when we're ready, you're ready to buy, jump in, put your offers in and close it out quickly so that they don't step away and wait for something else. Otherwise, they will do that in this market. Yeah. So using open negotiation to me is absolute key to making sure that our vendors get the best price. It is transparent. It's super competitive. It's accessible from anywhere in the world. And it's flexible because if you want to buy today because you've sold your property and you need to settle in 2 weeks' time, you can make an offer on a property and buy it today. You can't do that on an auction. Yeah. And some of the examples, I won't go into them. Some of the examples, we had one property in Lara, 148 offers in 9 days, 120 offers in 45 minutes, all of it captured electronically. Couldn't have done that any other way because I couldn't have done it on the phone. So it just works. So this is guaranteed to get the best price for clients, and it's the most flexible for clients, and that's who you're trying to work for. So I think that's pretty much it. I've gone over. I'll hand it back.
Awesome. Thank you, Wes. I could listen to him for hours. He just goes on and it's just always so engaging because he speaks so confidently about everything, unlike me with my script here. Now, Wes didn't read the script. We've actually got a break now, not before him. So it's just a 10-minute break, stretch your legs, grab some food, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes to finish off with our last 2 speakers. And then we'll move on to the Q&A before finishing up. Thanks, guys. All right, everybody, we might get started with our last couple of speakers. If you could all return to your seats, finish up your lovely conversations. There will be a chance for more networking afterwards. Yeah, so if everyone could return to their seats, please. Thank you. Don't make me be that guy. I will start naming names.
Right, so we're just going to continue the evening. I hope the extra drinks and the dessert was really good there and good conversation. We're going to have Nicole come up from Friend in Me. So everyone would have seen that tonight was a charity event and the proceeds went towards helping Friend in Me with raising awareness and raising funds for them. So with the collective, I haven't done the full numbers yet because we did have few people come last minute and do more, but I've looked at and I think that we've raised about $1,500 tonight to go towards a charity. So thank you, everyone. And Nicole's going to come up and share a little bit about Friend in Me. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm on the board of Friend in Me, which is it's actually a Geelong-based charity. So we work with a lot of families who have medically complex children or children with disabilities. So we really work on, I guess, inclusion is our big thing and making sure that there's no child left behind, basically. So the money tonight, thank you so much for everyone who's turned up. It's been a fantastic evening, so well done to everyone who's been involved. But the money tonight, I believe, is going towards a retreat. So we do retreats a couple of times a year for generally mums, but we're trying to hope to do some dad retreats as well who have kids that are in that medically complex or very complex disability space. So to get, parents to have a break and to work on themselves and just do their own personal development and work on their own wellness and things like that, because as we know, you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you are struggling yourself, it's really hard to deal with a child like that. I myself have a child with a disability. So my little one's 8. He's autistic and ADHD. So I completely understand, how hard that can be for parents. And, you don't want to come from, I guess, that desperation when you're dealing with your kids, as most parents don't. So that money is really, fantastic for us to put towards that. And the other stuff that we're doing is really lots of programs that we're writing at the moment around trauma, childhood trauma especially, and working with schools and early childhood and kindergartens around how teachers and early childhood educators work with kids that may be either neurodiverse or have trauma backgrounds. So thanks everyone for being here tonight and really appreciate the donation. So thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. What a great cause. Next up, we've got Joe Tucker. Joe Tucker is the Director and Head of Strategy at Property Principles, as well as the co-founder of Aus Property Investors, Australia's largest Facebook community for investors with 40,000 members and growing. So feel free to look that one up on Facebook if you're not already in it. Joe's community, which he runs with co-founder Jeff Miles, is a place for engagement, support, advice, and value for investors looking to grow their wealth through property. Tonight, he's going to share what he's seeing on the ground in the group and what opportunities lay ahead. Let's all welcome Joe Tucker to the stage.
Thank you. How are we all? Yes. Yes. Who is from Aus Property? Come on. Look at this. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, well, if you guys aren't a part of it, join the community. It is an awesome opportunity to learn from fellow investors, and that's really what it is about. I have a very corny canvas slide here, so apologies for the dollar signs. But it's communities, events, and things like this where I actually met Jeff Miles, who's the co-founder of the group, and everyone is, one of the things I used to think when I was an investor, well, I still am an investor, is that, you know, there are people that have money, there are people that have serviceability, and there are people that have the time and the skills. And everyone in this room is in a different part of that journey. So if anyone has money but doesn't have the time and the skills, then hook up with somebody, have a chat with somebody that has the opposite to what you have. And you can create a joint venture. You can do developments and subdivisions and all those type of things. So these types of communities and opportunities are great because you can network and grow your wealth by connecting each other. But my talk presentation thing here is all about trying to convince you guys why you should add value to every single purchase that you make. I have a clicker and it works. So we have had 12 interest rate rises over the past year. It's going pretty crazy at the moment. So I don't know if the buy and hold strategy, or also known as the buy and hope strategy, is going to be the best thing for you. There are other opportunities out there. And what I wanted to discuss today is turning every single one of you guys into a value add investor. That is my goal. So I don't know if, who is a value add investor? Put your hands up if you add value to the properties before, well, I mean, after you purchase them, hopefully. Don't go in before you get in trouble. But this is where we are seeing the most amount of opportunities for people. Like what we had right at the beginning, our real estate agent friend was saying that those type of deals they're on the market for longer. They're selling for cheaper. So if you can take the advantage of that, great. That is your equity that you can gain. Why is the buy and hope strategy not always the best? It's because you run out of cash and potential for equity growth straight away. So you save up a deposit, you save $80,000, $100,000, but you just don't have anything after that because you can't grow the equity and you can't grow the value because you've bought the end product. You bought something that's already at its finest and highest to best value. So I don't really remember what the slides are. So you're going to see what I see. This part here is talking about the fundamentals, the analysis, and boots on the ground. What I'm going to be talking about is value add right now, and I just don't want people to think that you still have to make sure the fundamentals of the area are there, the short-term, medium, and long-term data is there, and also making sure that you get boots on the ground and checking that the area makes sense. But when you do this buy and hope strategy, this is all you do. You just sit and you wait for your property to grow in value. And it's not really great. So why do we add value? Our slides are a bit messed up, but the real reason is to add equity and to also boost our rent. We have an absolutely amazing mortgage broker at the back there, Bushy Martin. He's been in our community. We've had him on the show many, many times. Check that out. But he may attest to this or may tell me I'm completely wrong. But as an investor, I like to think about having two things that are trying to balance each other out. We've got cash and equity in one hand, and then on the other hand, we've got our serviceability and borrowing ability. So when you add value to a property, you help both of those things and help them grow. So what will happen is you'll start to build a portfolio and you'll hit a ceiling in how much you can borrow, right? The bank will not lend you anymore. So you have to start to say, okay, well, are they not lending because I don't have cash and equity? Or are they not lending because I can't afford the serviceability or the borrowing capacity? So I need to start attacking the resource that I am limited on. So talking about equity, I'm talking about frozen equity. So you can buy a property that you can, typically you can buy 2 or 3 properties before you start to get into challenges of serviceability. You can buy a property that has equity in it, but you're not accessing it straight away. You don't need to do the renovation. You don't need to do the subdivision. You don't need to build the granny flat because you don't need it right now. But if you buy a property that has it stored in there already, you can get access to it at a later date. I wish I made them a little bit more transparent. But here are the 4 types of value add. So you can make money up front through a renovation. You can add a bathroom or add a wall. Or you can store it later through a granny flat or a subdivision as well. So that is it. So what are the types of things that we are looking for? This is a property that I purchased in Nor Lane for myself. This is what we want. We want an ugly duckling, something that is going to sit on the market a little while. It's not that pretty, but it's actually not going to cost that much money to get it to a point to grow my equity. So they don't have to be too ugly either, because this deal works just as well. So let's run through some of the numbers of what would happen if I used just the renovation strategy for this property. So we bought it for $280,000. We did an $18,000 renovation. So the value is now $320,000. Good on me. I made $40,000 in equity and netted $22,000. So like the reno minus the equity equaling 22. So every single dollar I put into this property, I got $2.20 in equity out. So that's when a renovation is like, that's not shooting the lights out. I wasn't not too happy about that one. But if I can add a wall or add a bathroom to that property, I'm fundamentally changing the makeup of that property. So I can then get a 3-bed. I think I'll have a slide for that. So if you guys go to domain.com.au and then click suburb profiles, it's going to bring up a list of stuff that looks like this. Where you've got the 2-bed house and you've got the 3-bed house. So you'll be able to see what Wes was talking about is what's the product on the market right now that's actually selling. He would have seen that a whole heap of 3 bedrooms were selling and people bought 4 bedrooms, made 4 bedrooms. It wasn't the product that the market wanted. It wasn't selling. So what you want to look for as a property investor is, where is the disparity between a 2-bed and a 3-bed, or a 3-bed and a 4-bed? And how can I take advantage of that? So in this instance, in this Norlane deal that I did, there is $74,000 difference in the market. So that's free money. Are there any builders in the room? Have we got any builders or guys that put walls up? Where's? Not anymore. How much? There he is. How much does it cost to make a wall? $1,000? Couple of thousand, 2,000, 3,000. Where would you guys put a wall in this little scenario here? So this has already, it's happened. So it can happen. It has happened. Where would you guys be putting a wall on this property? Lounge room. Yep. That's exactly what we did. All we did was we just put a wall up here. It cost $2,000 to put that wall up. So we I think I go into more. Oh God, how do I go back? So back, what? There we go. So yes, that's exactly what you do. What you do have to factor in as well is I've now got the lounge room. The dining room is now a lounge room. So what I did was put a breakfast bar in the kitchen to kind of give a bit of a, if you take something away, you have to give something back. So when you're looking at these type of deals, have a look at properties that have a 3-bed to a 4-bed. This one here is a ridiculous deal that I was looking at. You could purchase this thing for $700,000. It is currently a 2-bed, 1-bath property. But look at the difference. So people were struggling, the agent was struggling to price this because it is technically and legally a 2-bedroom property, because you can't, that MPR at the top left, you can't have a room being connected to another room without it not being connected. So that's some rule. So it doesn't look very good. He couldn't call it a 3-bedroom. So if you purchase this thing for $700,000, so few 2-bedders in this area sold for $200,000, but the 3-bedders went for $780,000. So straight away, 2-bed to 3-bed, you've got $80,000 in equity. 3-bed to 4-bed, you've got $178,000 equity. But if you were able to turn this to a 4-bed, 2-bath, you would make, based on this, it would be $958,000 or a $258,000 equity uplift from going from a 2 to a 4. Now, obviously, in reality, it's probably not going to be that different. It's going to be a completely different structure makeup. But when the banks look at your equity uplift and the valuer goes there, he says, well, it's not a 2-bed. It's not a 3-bed. It is a 4-bed. I mean, it's an ugly 4-bed. It's probably worth $900,000. Oh, that's what I'll put on it. You can then pull that equity out and then use that equity to put it onto your next investment property. So these are the types of opportunities. Actually, good question, because this took me bloody ages to work out. How would you make this into a 3-bed? Open to the room. How would you do it? Yeah. Yeah, he did it. Took him 2 seconds. Took him 2 seconds. I was like, we make it out of the lounge room. We turn it into the dining. No, none of that. Spot on. So what do? Is exactly, you make a hallway. You turn this to a hallway, put a wall up here, put a door up there. Thank you, Mr. Architect. Yeah, thank you very much. He's got it down. Well done. So, but if you are looking at it from a valuer's perspective, because that's who we're trying to entertain, CBA, Westpac, ANZ, all of these guys look at it from an equity perspective. How can you guys increase the equity? Great. Well, you've fundamentally shifted it. I think I have one more. Same kind of thing. Turning it from a 3-bed to a 4-bed. All you have to do, wall, door, and all of a sudden you've gone from a 3-bed to a 4-bed, which is $120,000 difference. Oh, I like it. I'll take it. I'll take 2. Next. Oh, okay. So there you go. We've done that. The other thing to talk about. Oh no, wait. We're going numbers now. So this is the reality of what happened with the Norlane deal that I did. I bought it for $280,000. I did a $22,000 renovation. The new value was $360,000. So equity uplift was $78,000, which allowed me to almost get my deposit back to be able to then go on and buy another property. So I put $1 in and I got $3.54 back. So every dollar invested is $3.54 of equity. Who would do that deal? Okay, there's a few that's like, oh shit, I've got to do some work here. Nothing in life is free, unfortunately. We do have to do it. A little bit of work on these things. However, we have amazing property managers. Sophie Anapliotis has helped set this entire event up. So a big round of applause for Sophie and the REG group, because our tickets are $30 and $20 of that is going to the charity, and a lot of the expenses are going to Sophie. So if anyone wants to donate to the charity of Sophie, as well as the amazing charities of Friending Me, please do that as well. Okay, that wasn't in the script. So what we want to do, hang on, this is why I had this slide, is we want to store our equity in the future. So you can make money up front, but you don't need to add a granny flat and a subdivision right now to get into the next deal, right? Because we don't need to do it. But if you can buy a property that has subdivision potential or further down the line renovation potential or granny flat potential, you can freeze your equity for later on when the banks say to you, hey, you know what, you can't actually borrow any more money. But you're saying, well, what do I need? Well, you need to increase your rent. Oh, but I'm still saving the same amount of money. I've still got $100,000. I've got $300,000 here. What am I meant to do? Great. Build a granny flat on the back. That's going to increase your serviceability because you're getting more rent. Great. You can now borrow another one and do the exact same thing all over again. Who is doing that? Crazy people. Crazy people. There's those numbers again. So subdivision is a topic you do have to do a little bit of research on. Our group, Aus Property Investors, we got 40,000 property investors in there. We don't ask for anything. We do it all free because we like talking to people like you guys. So thank you all for coming. But yeah, the main things we've done a couple of live sessions on development and subdivision. You need to understand the local zoning rules. What is a high density? What is low density? What does it all mean? How setback does the house have to be from the front of the room, from the front of the lawn, all of that stuff. So I'm a buyer's agent. I buy investment grade properties like this not every single day. They don't come up every day, but there are people that do development agencies. It's like a buyer's agent for developments. So you can find those people. So you don't need to be an expert in property development. Like, it's very scary to think, oh my gosh, now Joe, I need to know all of this. No, you have a professional team, you pay them a bit of money, and then they give you the return. So you just need to understand frontages, setbacks, minimum lot size, and just run every team by your deal. It's not that, there's that slide again. So I'm going to wrap up pretty soon, I think. It's up to the slides. But this is this property I had in Norlane, right? I did the renovation. I got it to 360. The true value of buying investment properties is buying in good areas. So Norlane has done really well since I purchased it. So this property is now, so I did that 360 and that gave me, what did it give me? Whatever the number of equity was. But the true value is it's gone from 360 to 500, 520 now. So all I did was just buy it and hold it. But I've got my frozen equity here by doing this subdivision. This other subdivision here is another deal that just talks and illustrates to the exact same point. What you do, all we're going to do is going to keep the driveway, so we don't need to spend infrastructure on that, and then just cut this block off, and that's going to give me land and the ability to develop as well. So if I go to the next one. What are granny flats? I imagine everyone knows what a granny flat is, but Granny's here to tell us it is a house that is connected. It's like a smaller house that's connected to the main house. You may not necessarily, it's a new block. It's on its own block and it's not on its own title. So it just means you can't, in some states like South Australia, you can't actually rent a house and a granny flat separately. In Queensland, you can. In Victoria, I'm not sure what the rules are. You can't do it. There you go. Subdivision it is. That's why I prefer subdivision. Also, in granny flats are more cash flow focused. So if someone says, hey, you should get a granny flat because you're going to grow the value of the property, it doesn't always stack up. Because if you spend $200,000 on a granny flat and you spend $500,000 on the property, a value is not going to go there and say, well, you spent 500 and you spent 200 for this, it's going to be 700,000. No. Bushy, does it stack up like that in reality? No, never. So this is more of a cash flow play. So when we're struggling with our serviceability and our borrowing ability, that's when you want to start implementing these strategies. When you're struggling with cash and equity, that's where the subdivision goes in. Why do I like subdivision? It gives us a whole heap of options. Right now, our option is buy, reno, extract equity. Great. But I'd prefer buy, reno, extract equity, subdivide the property. Am I going to sell the land? Am I going to keep the land? Am I going to sell both? Am I going to keep both? Am I going to sell the front one or keep the front one? Am I going to build on the land? Am I going to sell the new house? Am I going to sell the old house? You can sell both. You can sell them all. It's completely up to you. So you can do whatever you want with this land because it's yours. What is this? This is the numbers on a subdivision deal that we are in the middle of doing. So we bought it for $485,000. We did a renovation on it for $25,000. The new value is $560,000. So we've done our reno. We've got $1 in, $3 out. Awesome return. What we're going to do is, now I said 560. When you split off, 500 meters of land, you lose value. So you want to make sure that the property that you're buying, you don't lose too much value on the front house. So that's 520 now from 560. So we lost $40,000. So that needs to be factored into your feasibility. Any questions so far? Oh God, no, there's going to be a lot of questions on this slide, I think. But here are the subdivision numbers. Bought for 485. The reno in the subdivision was 94,000. The existing house value, the old house's new value is 520 because we lost that 40. The purchase of the land was, I put on here, 260 to include the $10,000 of selling. So essentially, at the end of 250,000 minus your subdivision costs equals 150,000 minus the $40,000 of equity that you've lost. You've got $110,000 that you can then, you've obviously got to pay tax and GST and all of those types of things, but you can put that money into the front house, which then allows you more serviceability because the value has increased and you've got less debt. So there's so many strategies that you can implement. I think we just covered them all off. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've got thank you next. There you go. Thank you, guys. Hope that was valuable.
Thank you. Awesome. So we are on to our last speaker of the night, Jodie Parker. After spending 20 years in the banking world, Jodie Parker ventured into accounting with a focus on finance strategy and a focus on business and property. Jodie's mission is to improve clients' finances and is passionate about helping his clients build their businesses' profits and their personal wealth. Jodie's services include business advice, accounting, taxation, and bookkeeping, and support through all accounting programs. Jody owns multiple properties, farms, and is part of many businesses. So his wealth and knowledge on tax structures goes well beyond a regular accountant. So if you'd like to buy a pair of his cycling shoes, Velo Kicks, and join Jody on a mountain bike ride, you will surely have your ear chewed off about property, tax structures, and all things business and finance. Let's all welcome Jody up the front.
Thanks, mate. That's a great intro. Cycling shoes, Velo Kicks. Just look it up online. They're a great set. I'm just going to start my timer. As you can see, there's no slide. As you can see, my piece of paper is pretty blank as well. Like I've got something on this side. Who here pays land tax? Yeah? Who here pays land tax in Victoria? Who here pays land tax in Queensland? Well, I don't. Okay, so there is land tax. That's something we always think about, isn't it? My segment today is about strategy. So the strategy that I'm here to talk about is about keeping your money. Okay, so it's not about so much about what benefit there is today, but the benefit when you go and sell that property. So how can you maximize that benefit that you get out of what you do when you sell that property? So anybody here today could probably go out and buy a property. But how do we buy that property? Do I buy it in your name, Helen? Do I buy it jointly with you, Stewie? Marcus, where are you? Are we going to buy it through a property trust? You know? What strategy are we going to take into what we buy? Because it's not about the now, it's about the then. Everything that's bought is sold. If you don't sell it, your kids will sell it. If your kids don't sell it, your partner will sell it. The courts will sell it, the bank will sell it. Somebody's going to sell it. And when they sell it, the outcome is going to be dictated by how you buy it. So if you buy it in your name, Wes, the whole outcome is going to be in your name solely. But Matt, if you buy it jointly with Leslie, then together you will share the outcome of that property. Now, if you buy it as joint tenants, that's a 50-50 split. If you buy it as tenants in common, who here knows what tenants in common is? That's a nice little spread. Who here knows what joint tenancy is? Okay. So joint tenancy has a survivorship clause. You die, your partner gets it. Okay, two brothers buy it, unintended consequence, bad luck, 20 years later, it all goes to your brother. You died. Your partner misses out. If you buy it as tenants in common is like a company. You receive that percentage of your ownership. So if you buy 50% and he buys 50%, you get 50% each. It goes into your estates. Okay? If you're a husband and wife, it goes into your estates as 50-50. It goes by the percentage. Principal place of residence. Who here knows that principal place of residence is exempt from capital gains tax? I hope we all know that, because your principal place of residence is exempt from tax. Okay, so people often, when they get into property, it's the first thing you buy. It's the house you're going to move into. And it's a great way to get into the market, because what you're doing is you're creating equity, and it's compulsory savings. The great thing about it is you're investing in you. The second thing that people usually do is they say, oh, I want to keep this property because I'm emotionally attached to it and I love it. You know, little Johnny's growing up here. You know, we've got some great memories, but I want to buy something bigger, and I want a swimming pool, and I want a tennis court, and I want something else. So off we go and we buy this second property. But we've still got this first property. So we take it to a real estate agent. Soph, where are you? Got to be here somewhere. Where's the hand? Can't see Sophie. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Doug. You moved around. You're getting around. That's good. Sorry. I'm losing my train of thought now. So what you do is you move into this second house. Okay, but you've got the first house and you bought it in joint names. So you've got this house in joint names and you've moved into your second house. But if you actually did some planning before you move, you might go to your local solicitor or a conveyancer and you might say, look, you know, we're looking at buying another house. So what if I change the ownership of that house to 90-10? So I'll use tenants in common. Now, spousal transfer, no stamp duty to pay, but you still got to pay transfer of land costs. So why am I doing that? I'm looking at it and I'm planning for the future. And I'm saying, okay, I know I'm going to get principal place of residence exemption on this property on a 90-10 split. I might buy the next property under tenants in common on a 90-10 split, but the reverse. So over here, the lady owns 90%. Over here, I own 90%. Yeah? So why do I do that? There's a 6-year rule in property. Tax department allows you a 6-year rule. You can be out of the property for up to 6 years and you can still sell it, claim principal place of residence exemption. But you cannot claim that principal place of residence exemption on 2 properties at any one time. You're allowed a 6-month overlap. They give a little bit of leniency there, but you're not allowed any more than that. Okay, but there are things that you can do around strategy, around property, around using your personal position if you employ the right strategy. So getting the right advice before you do something is really, really important. And if you speak to the right advisors, whether it's a financial planner or it's a right real estate agent or it's a right accountant, somebody involved in strategy that's going to help you do what you want to do. So me, I own property. First property I bought, I was 22 years of age. Okay, fresh out of school, got my first job. I was a rouseabout, that didn't last long. Got myself a job in a bank, and I stayed there for 23 years. But I was in that job at the bank for a little more than 12 months, and I bought my first block of land. So I went straight into a planner who was at my cricket club, and I said, I want to subdivide this because I can see an opportunity in this. And I cut it into 4 blocks. I went into a builder. I went into another builder and got a better price. And then those 4 blocks I subdivided. So I had them individually subdivided before I commenced the build. I then had the build on the first 2 blocks. And back in those days, you were allowed to do it. I'm not so sure you're allowed to do it now. But the construction started on those 2 blocks. And before they were at base stage, I already had them sold. I already had my money back. And I had more than doubled the value of my initial investment in that property. Now, these opportunities are all over Victoria. They might not necessarily be here in the cities, but they are when you start to go out to the country towns. And whether or not you want to invest in those country towns, you want to go in with your eyes wide open, because if there's job opportunities there, you'll make money. If there's not, you might have that asset for a very long time. What do I do now, though, when I invest in property? And I have a few, but every one of those properties that I have is through a property trust. Every single piece of land I have, except my house, is through a property trust. Why do I use a property trust? I have 3 kids. Those kids are now 24, 22, and 17. She's just about to turn 18. It's good. It's not so good because if she was 18 in June, like I planned it with her mum, she's 18 in July, so it's not as good on the tax. But it's okay. Next year, she'll be 18, right? So if I sell a property next year, and she will still be at university, the only one, the others are tradies. If she's still at university and I sell one of these properties, I've got the opportunity there through my trust to distribute income to my daughter, and I get a really good tax outcome from that. Okay? Should have had triplets. We had 1. Still got 3. That's really good. But you understand the benefit of the structure that I've got. So if I want to crystallize one of those assets and take advantage of that, because I've got that trust, I'm not going to pay the tax burden that I'd otherwise pay. A young couple came in and seen me last year. They're around 25 years of age. And we sat down and we spoke about a strategy as to how they wanted to go forward with their income. Collectively, they earn around $200,000. They have a property that he bought when he was very young. He's 25, as I just said. It's more than doubled in value. He got very lucky. Okay, so they've got equity and they've got serviceability. So we started on a strategy, and I said to him, what are your plans? What are your plans? Is there anybody here in the room that buys property for 1 year, 2 years? Do you buy it for 10 years? Yeah? Property is generally bought for a minimum of 5 years, 7 years ideally. 10 years plus is what most property investors generally go into there to look to buy for. We spoke about the hope. I hope it's going to go up. You're right. Most investors go in and they just hope it's going to go up in value, and that doesn't always happen, so you need to buy in the right spots. I lost my train of thought. Where was I just a sec ago? No, I've gone past that. The 25-year-old couple. Thank you. I was getting really embarrassed. Dementia's kicking in early. Anyway, so what we spoke about was the family. And we spoke about what their intentions were over the next 5-10 years. Their intentions were that she was going to have a baby at some point 5 years onwards. So what we said was, okay, let's look at our sales strategy. So what we want is we want more of those. If those sales happen, we want some of those sales proceeds to go across to her so it supplements her income during those years when the children are young. And she might not go back to work full-time. She might go back to work part-time. The other thing that we looked at was, because we did a property trust, we put a corporate trustee in place. And that corporate trustee can receive money from the sale of a property. It doesn't get the capital gains discount because it's a company, but it can receive money. It does pay tax, but that franking credit can still come down to whoever the shareholder is of that company, which could be another trust. I don't really do that too much because that's just creating entities for the sake of it. But if that's her and that's their strategy, then that's great, isn't it? Because those franking credits are still going to flow through, and they might have 3, 4, 5 children just because they can, because like they've made all this money out of property. So the point I'm making is about strategy is, if you get the base right, if you take the time to think about where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years, if you put the effort into creating the right structure from the beginning, then you're going to maximize the outcome of whatever comes about from it. If you do it in your individual names, you lock you in to your outcome. There is nobody else. It is you. You put it in your individual name, you're the one on the line. There are some ways that you can play with it through spousal transfers, because you can do that. But once again, talk to a solicitor, talk to a conveyancer. My message today was around structure. I hope you got something out of what I spoke about. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. Nice bit of paper there. It's not got much writing on it. All right, so we are a bit over time, but I think we are still going to move forward with the Q&A. So I'll get all of the speakers up the front, please, and we can get started on that. Sweet. Yeah, good idea. Give them a round of applause as they make their way up.
We're also a little light on financing, so we have the amazing Bushy Martin here as well. So welcome Bushy to the stage, please.
All right, so we've got a few microphones up. I will run around the room with any questions. So who wants to start us off with a question for anyone here? If you've got any, we might have some online as well. So you guys know everything about property investing now. Awesome, we've got one here.
I'm not sure. I'm Helene, by the way. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you guys know about the secondary dwelling pilot program in 2021 that was done in Victoria. So that's about the granny flat trial. So it was supposedly about, I think, Daniel Andrews piloting a program so that they can trial putting granny flats at the back of properties in just select suburbs. It folded in roundabout in the 2021, but there's no news about it. So I was wondering if anyone knows what happened to it.
Helene, you need to be up here and telling us.
I'm just curious because, I'm one of those people who like the granny flat to get taken down, just like So nothing.
I don't know all the suburbs, but I think it's one that's down here, particularly anyone where it is, talking about a little bit more further out into just maybe check the councils as to what the labour is. It's not going to do it everywhere. Start again. No, so I think just check with the councils there. I'm not that familiar with.
And I'm going to look into that as well, because that's an area that of course, I shared before that I would like to see happen, and I'm going to look into that and see the folding of it and whether it's going to come back up. But that's really good to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Next question. No? Nobody?
I have a question for Wes. You said you had, 30 like top tips. I would love to hear some of your more top tips. I'm putting you on the spot here because I know you probably have them listed out, like go into deep detail.
This is from a buying cheap perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, there's a lot of agents who'll tell you the story and the issues that relate to a property. So where vendors have got issues, I've been to a property, I won't say which agency, and I could walk up to the property and I could see that it was unfinished. And I just said to the agent, they didn't finish this property. They've run out of money. And he's going, yeah, they've run out of money. And he said, so make me an offer and I'll take it to them. Like, it's just that we don't do that, but that happens, right? So that's going to happen all the time. So yeah, a volume selling agent definitely is the way to go. They will always sell cheap because why? They're trying to be number one, right? So there's broke agents in the industry that are making nothing at all. You can buy off those guys, yeah, because they're not making enough. You can get the volume sales agents because they're turning a lot over, but they've got to turn a lot over to stay number one, and that's their motivation. If you look into it, they're the narcissistic type that have to be number one, seen as number one. So you can buy off those guys. They're great to buy off, for sure. Buying cheap and buying where you're talking about subdivisions. So you're buying the asset that looks like the asset, but there's another asset attached to it. Yeah. So perfect example from the subdivision perspective. The rezoning of something, being ahead of the game and understanding the rezoning. Looking at a property that someone looks at and says, well, it's an ugly duckling, but what can you do and how can you change its use? Whether it be a wall like you're talking about or any of those situations. What else? Yeah, just off the top of my head. So what are others that we've done? So yeah, change of use. Buying in bulk off developers, because you can buy a discount for everybody. So if you've got a few people together that want to actually purchase a property and a particular type of property, you go to the developer and say, listen, we'll take those 5 off you. Give us a discount, we'll get them all put away. And you get them away, and you buy at a discount because of it. So, being collectively, doing it together, you can do that. Shooting holes in properties, finding problems, like having been a builder, I'll walk up, if any of you guys are agents, you'd hate me coming up to your property because I'm going to pull everything apart on your property to make it so bad that when you go back to your vendor to get a discount, you're convincing them that they've got to sell for what I want to offer. So being able to find problems is a really strong point. So, but also on the flip side, you need to know that you don't get pushed and shoved around by that sort of stuff when you're an agent and you go, no, I don't care what you say. That's nothing, So, yeah, what else? Again, buying in underdeveloped areas that people just don't see what's available to them. It could be an old place. One that you can look at is that you might have the old property that sits on a block. You've got to be careful that when you do the subdivision on it, that you're not actually undermining what you do. So we sold a property in Herne Hill that by keeping the house where a family member had passed away was going to be a problem for that property. So if we were to put that on the market, they were going to get less because we actually had to disclose, it's law here to disclose that there's someone died there. So we just said to them, we financed it, we'll demolish the property, and we sold it. And we sold a 500 and whatever it was, a 600 square metre block roughly, or just under, for about $1,200 a square metre. It was a crazy price because we knew at that point to sell the old house was going to harm the sale, but to actually then be able to sell a vacant block that they couldn't get in the suburb was going to be a big sale, was going to demand it. So it's looking for that problem sale like that, because a lot of agents won't look at that and they won't demolish it. They'll just go and buying a hoarder's house. We actually pulled a hoarder's house apart for her and sold the hoarder's house. Lovely old lady, 84 years old, probably the toughest one I ever went through. Someone could have bought that super cheap because no agent wanted to deal with it. We stepped in and said, we'll help you. So we helped her to actually get it cleaned out, scrubbed it out, like it was 13, 15 cubic metre skips out of that property. And then we put it on the market. After I took the hose into the property and literally hosed the inside of the house out and scrubbed the walls personally, put it on the market, and we sold it to a tradie. We knew who to sell to. So you could be the buyer of that property because the agent doesn't want to sell it, and it could have been sold cheap. Yeah, there's just so many in that regard. Yeah, just a few.
Yeah, awesome. Well, there's a lot of investors here. Like, what are? Yeah, sorry, great question.
So, is there an area that you'd recommend we start looking at right now for if we're looking for purchasing for investment purposes?
I'll answer because I had this question from someone else just before. If I was personally looking for my next investment in Geelong right now, I'd be buying in Newcomb. Like, I think that Newcomb is one of the most undervalued suburbs. I'm not from Geelong originally. I'm a Melbourneite. I know that you hold that against me. And I started working in Geelong 2 years ago. And the first time I didn't open in Newcomb, I put my boards on the corner of the street, and I had another agent come to my open and say, "Are you crazy? Your boards are going to get stolen." I'm like, okay, I'll risk it. It's not my board, it's the agency's. Never have I had a board stolen in Newcomb. And now you see them all over because, like, I think gentrification-wise, it's coming along really quickly. There's a lot of young families. There's a lot of cafes that are starting to open. There's the accessibility to the CBD of Geelong is crazy close. And you just get so much bang for your buck in the land sizes in Newcomb. Yeah, there's certain pockets where you've got really oddly shaped properties where a subdivision wouldn't work because you're in a corner and just like, those weird courts and they're kind of on a triangle and things are angled a certain way. Like, some of those are not going to work. No, but that's cool. I'd be buying in Newcomb. Corio also has a massive amount of development going in over the next couple of years. Another buyer's agent that I used to work with very closely, she used to say to me, if you can buy somewhere that's a bit for the next few years and you just put up with it and put a tenant in there that's happy to stay there for a little while, it'll pay off big time. So I'd be going Corio and Newcomb.
Add to 3214 and 321 and 3219 is the areas that we've been primarily sort of growing in terms of investors coming in. And one thing to make note of with Corio and Nor Lane is really, really do your due diligence in what the changes are going to be over the next 10 years, because there's been zoning changes that are actually making Corio more of an inner city suburb, and it's going to change the behaviours and where people have to go to put their kids in school. So look at the northern suburbs, but have a broader scope of what's actually happening from Corio, Nor Lane, all the way up to Lara as well when you're looking at investing, because there's a lot of changes that are happening that you don't necessarily look at until you start looking at those sort of factors such as schooling, zoning changes, those sort of things, infrastructure. Yeah.
North Geelong's another good one too. Newcomb, I think, is really good. We spoke about, personally did a video on it years ago about how Newcomb was the closest developed area to the Geelong city, to hospitals, to everything that you really need. And if you did a ring around Geelong, just find the cheapest suburb, and it's Newcomb. A ring around Geelong, 5K, it's Newcomb. Yeah, and so it's got so much, and it's north to water. So you look at Port Melbourne, and that's what I said at that time when I was selling a house there. This is the reverse of Port Melbourne. Port Melbourne being south to water, this is north to water, but it's that sort of what Port Melbourne was many, many years ago. Working class, just standard old housing. It's all getting gentrified, as you say. So I think definitely Newcomb for me, North Geelong, because it's got the station, and it's the poor part, and it's a Geelong West. It's not really, but it kind of is. So you pick the house up in North Geelong, you put it across in Geelong West, and you pick up another couple of $100,000 in North Geelong. You can buy good blocks, good houses, good solid location. It need some gentrification too? Yes, it does, and it's getting it. I think there's great opportunity there, even before you get out to the Nor Lanes and all those other areas. Just depends on what you've got to spend. But yeah, I'd certainly look there for sure.
So Southeast Queensland's got the Olympics coming up, and there's a lot of talk about what that's going to do for the property values there. But little old Geelong's getting part of the Commonwealth Games, lots of infrastructure, some of it temporary, some of it permanent. What's it going to do here, guys? So Bushy, Joe, Wes, one of you guys?
Well, Joe will have a lot to say about this as well, but the big focus has always got to be scarcity. That's as simple as it gets. And there's three elements of scarcity, and that's supply on one side, demand on the other, and then sentiment in the middle. And what we're seeing a lot more of, because the media hasn't got much else to talk about at the moment, so property is something they can scare the hell out of us with. The sentiment factor has a far bigger impact. So if we drill that down and we look at major events, you've got to be a little bit careful about major events, because depending on what you're investing for, and I guess the underlying tone of everything that's been said tonight is all about getting absolutely crystal clear before you start on what your end game looks like. So start with the end in mind and get very clear on, and I'd go as far as saying beyond the property side, get really clear on exactly how you want to live and how much that lifestyle costs, and then project out based on where you're at, where you're likely to end up. And if there's a gap between that and where you want to be, that will dictate the type of property strategy you need to start embracing. Because there'll be some investors in this room who are focused on cash flow. There'll be other investors who are focused on growth. And while they're not mutually exclusive, the different types of property will give you different results in each of those. So you need to be really clear on that. And you also need to, from where I sit, and I don't know about people on the panel here, but the property is actually the last thing that I look at, because I want to build it all out on paper first. The numbers have to work. And there were some very good comments about spreadsheeting the exercise, so you really knowing what you're talking about in that regard. But it's also about making sure you've got an independent elite team assisting you, so you're not having to reinvent the wheel in the process. You've got people who, as long as they're doing what they're suggesting you're going to do, and as long as they're independent of each other, so there's not always going to be agreement around various things. We pick up some of the comments that Jody made around structures. Trusts are really good in occasions if you're holding properties long term and there's an ongoing legacy impact. But there is going to be a cash flow holding cost impact on a trust versus a tenants in common exercise. So if you're an early stage investor and cash flow is going to be really important to you, trust may just get to the point where it's going to be unaffordable to hold a property in a trust versus a tenants in common early. So the evolution of the entity structure and the ownership needs to change based on where you're at and where you're heading to. And I'm gone completely off tangent here in relation to talking about Geelong, but I'm going to come back to that now. The one thing that I think we need to be concentrating on, particularly in the current market, wherever you're investing, and I tend to be very borderless in the approach, because it is about the numbers, not about the opportunity, about the actual location. 80% of the growth is going to come from the location, not the property itself. And the three key things that we need to be focusing on moving forward, given we've just been through the second highest property boom in the 230-year history of the country post-COVID, is that a lot of areas are going to flatline now for a considerable period of time. We've effectively brought forward anywhere between 3 to 5 years of capital growth in the space of about 18 months. Now, that means that a lot of areas, unless they've got growth drivers, and if it's capital growth that you're looking for, then the three major growth drivers, and there's a whole bunch of them, but the ones that are easy to remember are the 3 I's. So it's new infrastructure, it's new industry, and it's strong and growing incomes. So if we apply the 3 I's to both Geelong and Surfers Paradise, there is going to be a ramp up because there's going to be new infrastructure. So that's a big tick. The new infrastructure that's going to come into Geelong, and it has a flow on a ripple effect. If they're putting in sporting facilities and everything else, then there's a lot of other support that goes with it. And that's a big tick for an opportunity for growth in Geelong. If there are new and strong and growing industries in an area, and again, Geelong has experienced a fair bit of that in recent times with the decentralisation of the Victorian government down here, and the flow on that's happening with the work that's being done with the rail upgrade and the changes to the Avalon Airport. That's another big tick in the infrastructure box. And what flows from that is, one of the old premises of property is follow the jobs. Because of strong incomes and there's new jobs being created, that puts demand pressure on property. And if the incomes are growing, people can continue to pay more for the properties, and therefore that's not going to be capped out as the values start to increase. So if you apply the 3 I's to Geelong, I think there's definitely going to be a boost. Geelong, we need to remember that this area has gone through a very strong growth period, though, in recent times. So you need to look very carefully at the sustainability of that. and it's the new 3 Is that's going to apply here that will continue that effort. And the Commonwealth Games is definitely going to be a boost in that regard if you're careful about where you buy. Is that you want some thoughts on that, Joe?
How good is Geelong? Is what I got from that. Any other questions? There were only you got one. Yeah, awesome.
So most of the time you're talking about do your homework, just keep searching and find the right data. I'm an engineer, so it's all about data. If I couldn't find the right data, I might not step in. So what will be your recommendation as a tools or whatever that I can use that if you're talking about the spreadsheet, for example, that give you all the data about what you square meter or all of that things. So what will be your recommendation also for renovation type of things, because I'm not in the industry, so I don't know how much might cost. So whether any tool could help with that.
Yeah, so from the data side of things, there's so much information out there now that everyone's got access to a lot of stuff. So you definitely want to drill into whether it's you use a price finder, you use RP data, but you don't want to rely on them because the data that goes into those systems is put in there by agents, and agents aren't that good at what they do. Right, so or honest, right? They're just not putting the right information in. So there was a period of time because realestate.com.au was trying to sell the data that they collected, and the agents weren't putting the right figures in. They were just putting $1 in for a sale of a house, you know, just because they didn't want to be buying it back off realestate.com, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. So you've got to look beyond all that. So you want to use that. But there's also land data sites, the government sites, where you can actually check the square meterage of the land. So you can also order titles. But what you want to do is you really want to drill it down to 3 suburbs. You don't want to try and do this across a broad market. So you should look at everything. You should find the location that you want to invest in first, that where you've got infrastructure happening. You know, all of these, where's the money being spent? You want to follow the money that's being spent by government, by local government, by big businesses. We bought some stuff in Yeppoon years ago. And why do we do it? Because there was companies there going to spend a bomb on golfing resorts. So I couldn't afford to buy a golfing resort, but we bought I think it was about 12,000 square meter site just near a golfing resort that we then did unit development on it and sold it. So that's all we did. We just did the unit development in terms of the design and sold it. You know, so you don't actually have to buy the big stuff. You just got to follow the lead and let them be your market, because they've done the homework. You just got to find the cheap stuff that floats around theirs. So to me, you find that market and you drill into that market, but you concentrate only on 2 or 3 areas because you'll wear yourself thin until you exhaust it. And then the numbers that you drill into have got to be every aspect of what I talked about. So it's the land, it's the orientation, it's the size, it's the zoning, it's the aspects that people are after in those areas. What's the type of property that they want to have in those areas? What's the makeup of those properties? You know, what makes one better than the other, more desirable than another? Is it high ceilings? Is it regular ceilings? You know, what are the finishes inside a property so that you can pick the differences? Because if you don't know, if you can't look at an image and you can't tell the differences between what you're seeing in Grovedale that has 2,400 ceilings, that's pretty typical through Grovedale, a 2,400 ceiling. Then you step across into Highton and they lifted the ceiling slightly in a number of those, but it was the same type of build. Then when you go to Newtown, you're at 3 metre ceilings and 2,700 ceilings. Well, what do people want? If you can afford it, you go 27 and 3. Yeah, you're not going to go low. So if you can understand all these things by looking at a picture, you can then go, well, okay, this is the type of construction there. This is the type of finishes there. These finishes are worth X. How do you find out those prices? Talk to trades. Ring your shower screen guys and say, what's a standard frame shower screen worth and what's a frameless 2,400 high shower screen worth? What's it going to cost me? Yeah. You know, what's an in-situ shower base going to cost me? What's the porcelain tile? So you can buy Italian porcelain tiles, you can buy porcelain tiles that look like Italian tiles, you know, like a big price difference. So what you're going to get away with in a particular type of property, but don't cut the corners. You know, if you've got a tile at full height, what's that going to cost you as opposed to tiling to a standard builder's range height? Yeah, what's the bath going to cost you? What are the best basics? So I've seen people spend $1,000 on a tap and you don't need to do it because the house is not going to pay you back. Yeah, so you've got to look at all these elements, create a spreadsheet out of that, and then you'll know exactly when you step into a place, what's it, Mr. Painter, what's it going to cost me to paint this room? Just one room. Just give me that cost.
What I like about you saying, Victor, is that data is a driver. Everyone's got an opinion, but opinion doesn't mean squat. So data tells the truth. There's a bucket load of free data on the internet if you just keep searching. And you need to cross-reference it, because you're right. One source not be accurate, needs to be reinforced a couple of times. If I was starting, I tend to do a macro, a micro, and a micro look. So you look at the macro area to look at where those three I's are happening. Once you drill down below that and you do your desktop research, and there's just a stack of information that you can get on webs there's Real Estate Investor, there's RP Data, there's just domain and realestate.com, and even start to pick up some of the key aspects. So if I was investing, I tend to look at areas where there's at least 25,000 people, because you need a critical mass there with a diversity of industry. If you get much below that and it's a one-horse town, then if that industry gets in strife, then that tends to have a big impact on employment and property values. Once we get below that, though, then your best friend, once you've decided on an area and a region, your best resource is a really good local property manager. They are worth their weight in gold. Why? Because a sales agent, and no denigration to sales agents, they're there to sell property, so they're going to blow smoke up your ass in terms of what they think it's worth. A property manager, if they tell you a property is good and it's not, they're going to inherit the headache, because it's going to become their problem. So what I like about property managers, particularly property managers who are active investors, because they've got skin in the game, then they not only know that property, but they know how that property compares with what else is actually renting in that area. And they can tell you whether the precinct's any good. So the property might be good, but if the street's no good, or people in that location think that the area is shite, then that is going to affect the perception and therefore the potential value that you're going to end up with. So use the free stuff, because there's buckets of it out there. And then once you've, and one of the really easy resources is the Heron Todd White National Property Clock. It starts to pick up regions that are in the growth cycle of the exercise. Drill down on a few of those, do some desktop, and then start to talk to some property managers in the locations, and that'll start to really zero it down for you.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you make there, Bushy. And it's also, I was going to mention a bit of both, is use your local resources. If you're looking, and if you are going to be looking at, hey, Victoria makes sense numbers wise, I'm going to call a property manager, get them to put the numbers together, because what you see online isn't necessarily what's happening on the ground. And I think that's where a lot of investors sort of get it wrong, in a sense, where they buy the property thinking they're going to get that return, and then they go to a property manager and it's not necessarily what they expected. Because when we're putting the data together, I'm all about the data and numbers. That's all what it comes down to for me. And sometimes we go, yep, okay, you can get this price. However, your time on market is X and your stock is this, which means that your demand is low. So to do this, you may end up losing 30 days worth of income, which is 4 weeks. And then every week that it's sitting there vacant, you're losing 2% of your annual income. So does it actually make sense to do that? And you're better off knowing that information before you're committing to it. And also, when you buy a property, it settles in 60 to 90 days. So you need to ask what is going to be happening in the market at that time. Is it going to be high demand? Is it going to be low demand? So there's a lot of questions that your property manager can answer, because they're doing it every single day. And a lot of property managers now are starting to come out, and they are investors. Like, they do understand what we're looking at. Joe and I, we looked at a property the other week. The property was on the market for 120 days, the one, yep. And we went and had a look at it, and within a couple of hours, we found out that it looked really horrible, and that's why it was sitting on the market that long. The agent didn't know what was wrong with it. They knew that it was a problem, but they didn't actually go through the effort to find out what was wrong with it. Within a couple of hours, we found out that it was going to be about a $10,000 fix, and everything was fine. That could have been done 120 days ago, and he lost about 60K on the deal because he didn't know that information. So it's really using the people around you. And bathroom renovations, they're happening a lot, and they get good return. We've got guys, we just did one the other day for, 11,900 or something like that, where when you talk to a standard builder, you could think that it's going to cost you $25,000 or $30,000, but your property managers are talking to your trades daily. They've got those networks, they've got those connections, so they can get information for you very, very quickly before you commit to the deal. It's before you commit, not after.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is your team. Like, the property manager is one of the most important teams, and they get paid the least, but they have the most amount of knowledge. So when it comes to doing these, like what I was talking about, value add, subdivision, and they may not know about the rules and codes of subdivision, but they'll know exactly, like doing a bathroom for $12,000. Nowhere in Australia can you do a bathroom for $12,000, but then I go and see what Sophie's doing, and she's knocking them out left, right, and center. So use the people that you have on your team. Free data and resources are really good, but the paid data as well is super, super useful. So it just takes time. You've got to look at the infrastructure. You've got to look at the employment. You've got to see what is the supply coming on to the market as well. That's all free data that's out there through the government websites. It's just siphoning through it and trying to understand where's the supply coming from, what is the demand side of things, and it's kind of like an equation, right? If there's too much supply coming and there's not enough demand to soak that up, it's going to take a while for prices to continue to grow. But yeah, just leverage a team of professionals and actually have them all talking to each other. So we have Jody talking about structures, and he wants to protect you and do everything on that side of things. We got Bushy trying to get you as much borrowing capacity, but those two worlds may not actually connect. Like another accountant might say, hey, we want to get the best tax depreciation. As a buyer's agent, no, we want to get the best asset that's going to continue to grow. So all of your team needs to be kind of communicating on what is the best outcome for you. So make sure that you get a good team, but I would just be wary of like one-stop shops, because that's where they all have an incentive to push each other to them. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing to that, Joe?
Go on, mate.
If your team agrees, you've got the wrong team.
Yeah.
Absolutely spot on. You actually, if there's robust discussion happening, you've got a good team. And the good part about that is you get to see the pros and cons of all sides, and then you make a decision on what's right for you. Very good comment.
Awesome. Well, speaking of robust discussion, I saw that only 4 or 5 of you were actually in the group Aus Property Investors. So we're going to do one more question, but if you have any other questions, you can ask him in that group. And I'm not sure if Joe will be the one answering them, but he'll probably do his best.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Okay, cool. Do we have any other questions before we finish up? Anyone up the back have anything? No?
What are the biggest challenges? Is maybe we can get a couple more questions if you guys are keen. But what are the biggest challenges, like as investors out there, that you guys are seeing? Like, what are you guys struggling with? Maybe for like someone that's a first-time investor who's not in the market yet, and then someone that's a little older. Yeah, give us a run through. Money.
Don't ever let money stop you buying a property that's got value in it. If you learn these skills and you apply the skills, the deal will find you the money. I can guarantee that. I've done deals that are worth millions of dollars that I didn't put a cent in. Yeah, because I had the skill to create it and people needed to be part of it, and they've done really well out of it. So there's always someone, which you've touched on anyway, is there's something you might be strong at. If you're strong with the knowledge, great. If you're strong with the money, great. But if you haven't got the money, get the knowledge. Yeah, and then find the deal, and you'll find someone that wants to be part of it.
Yeah.
I'll actually share the latest deal that we did. I didn't know whether we would be able to borrow the money at the time that we did this, right? Because as I said before, I'm an optimist. If you can make it happen, it'll happen, right? So one of the things that Wes just talked about before was looking at opportunities. The house that we bought, the state that it was in, and we're going to make a good return out of it, but it's going to take a bit of time. I did right as soon as I get in the car, the deal's off the table. So either get the deal now and it's a done deal, or I'm done. They came out, I got the handshake. Tim and I got in the car, and I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to get the money yet. We had an idea, like we knew-ish, but we had the right team around us to be able to go, right, this is what we're doing. Let's make it happen. And I'm not saying just go out and put an offer on a property and do it, but there's good people around you who will be able to show you different ways of how you can structure the next 12 months. So then you can look at, buying things. And Wes always talks about, if you don't have the ability to buy property now or don't have a deposit now, property is not the only thing that you can invest in either. So having a good financial advisor around you to then get you from, if it takes you from A, B, C, D, E to then get you to F, and F is that property, then have that plan in place, but use the people around you. Have a good team around you to work out what that plan is going to be for you. But yeah, like I'm not saying go out and just make it happen, but
there is always opportunities out there, and just surround yourself with good people who can help with that.
Like even right now, who has some money but zero time and zero skill? Put your hand up. All right. Who has skill but no money and no serviceability? Yeah, it's it, but right. And then who has serviceability? And that's all you need for a deal. You need someone to find the deal. You need someone to finance the deal. And then what was the other one? You service it. Yeah, that's all you need. So you can actually, like, I'm in the middle of a joint venture with a developer. I found the deal, I negotiated the deal, and he's going to run the deal. And we're both just splitting the profit, splitting the money. Great, easy. And then on to the next one. It's not easy. No, it's a bloody nightmare. Do you know how hard it is to get electricity taken off a place? Apparently difficult. But yes, you can do it if you have a limited resource. Someone will be out there to help you with it.
Just remember too with that it has to be a win-win. So you've got to remember that if you've only got one part of it and you need two other parts of it, you have to look after those other parties. You can't just go, this is all about me, bad luck. You know, my accountant used to say to me all the time, you just give too much away. Yeah, but the deal doesn't get done if I don't, because I've only got part of it. So, and I need those other two. So if I don't have it, then they're super important. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. So, you know, why not give something away, you know, to me? And so you make it win-win. Don't ever think it's about you.
The best thing that all of you have done tonight, and I congratulate you all for doing this, is being here, because all of us here would get to talk to people who are gunner, and they never do a thing. Very few people take the time to invest in their knowledge, and you're all doing that tonight. And one of the best ways to continue that is to jump on board with the Aus Property Investors Facebook group, because I've been involved on the periphery of that group now for, nearly 2 or 3 years, I think. And I've seen that group grow from about 11,000 when I first spoke to you, Joe, to over 40,000 now. And as a safe place to share information without being sold to and without being BS'd to, it's a really good place to actually swim with like-minded people who are quite open to share what they're doing, how they do it, what worked, what didn't. And in terms of the partners that we're talking about, that you might need to get together with someone to fill the finance piece or the skill piece or the time piece, then there's a horde of people swimming in that pool that are well positioned to help you out in that regard. So if you haven't joined the Facebook group, and Joe's not paying me to say this, but and I don't say this very lightly, because there's a lot of crap Facebook groups out there who are just thin veneers for sales teams trying to flog your rubbish. But the group that Joe and Jeff are managing, it's really good content every week. There's a couple of hours for the live sessions that you run, and there's a whole bunch of people there that are just like us who are wanting to learn and do things better. So if you haven't joined the group, jump on board.
Yes, please do it. It's a great little group. Everyone learns.
Yeah, I might just say a little something. Do you ever hear the words, if only I had? I bought that block of land, but if only I had bought the block next door to it as well at the same time. If only I had bought that little shack down there at Anglesea, 20 years ago when I first moved to Geelong, and they were so cheap. Oh, gosh. I'll tell you what, if only I had. I see so many people that will come into my office and they'll be 50, 60. They'll own their house outright and they'll still have, $200,000 worth of income. They've got all this untapped equity, but they've only got a certain period of their life where they're going to have that income. And once they don't have that income, they don't have that serviceability. They can't go to Bushy and get him to help them with the right loan. Or they've just waited just too long before they've got out of their comfort zone and done something more than what they do every other day. If you only ever do tomorrow what you do today, you'll only ever be the sum of what you are. And they're really true words. So sometimes it's very uncomfortable to do things like property invest. You surround yourself with the right people. You surround yourself with crowds like tonight. You go along to these seminars and you'll grow from them and you'll make the right choices.
I think we have a prize to give away. Do we have a prize?
We do have a prize.
We have a prize. We have whoever has travelled the farthest to get here gets an amazing prize. I think, as I'm from Sydney,
rigged.
I think I
rigged.
get.
Redraw.
So I'm not in the running. I'm not in
good.
the running. What have we got? Who are the runners up? What are some of the distances that people have traveled to get here? Okay. More. It's been 20 years in the making.
Well done, Jeff.
How did you sneak in?
An hour 20. Who has beaten an hour 20? 84. Oh, hour 17. Prize is pretty good, guys. I don't know. I'd be throwing out 2 hours. Linda.
Sweet.
Thank you, Linda.
Congratulations.
I'm glad to see the name. Lovely baritone voice.
Thank you. Love it.
Awesome.
So I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much. We did go a little bit over tonight, so I thank everyone. The fact that everyone's still in the room means that everyone's enjoyed the evening. I'm hoping that, is the bar still open? Yes, bar's still open.
Woo.
So grab another drink, have a bit of a mingle before you head off. And if you have something else to say, James, Mr. MC.
Big round of applause for our experts, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Now we mingle, we learn and grow as property investors. Let's go buy a property. See you guys later. Oh.